It's all going down. Tyrone Bowman live. Welcome to the conversation, everybody. Welcome to the program on tonight. I will be covering a lot of topics within the next 2 hours. No, we're not going to be on this live for 2 hours, but I'll be bringing several stories. I'll be dealing with several topics and several issues, things that are relative and important at the same time. We're going to talk about here on tonight, but before I get into tonight's topic, two things I want to say. Number one, whenever I talk about stories and people, it's never personal with me. It's about principle, it's about respective journalism, and it's about dealing with issues that are relevant and important and things that are on people's minds. Oftentimes, I found out that many times individuals who are constantly working around the clock, they just don't have time to keep up with every little thing. So I try to do my part on this end to try to help keep them fully abreast of it. So what's going on with the DOJ, the Department of Justice, and the former FBI Director James Comey's case? Here's an update. According to an article for The Hill, written by Ella Lee, the headline reads, DOJ admits full grand jury never reviewed final Comey indictment, further imperiling the case. Quote, the Justice Department admitted Wednesday that the operative indictment against former FBI Director James Comey was never presented to the full grand jury. A procedural error defense attorneys say should bar the prosecution. Why is there such a major mishap with alleged crimes purportedly to have been committed by the former FBI Director James Comey? Are you trying to tell a court of law that you came before the grand jury without even reviewing the alleged evidence against the former FBI director? As a matter of fact, I think this case is in jeopardy. And it may end up with a full dismissal. And if it ever goes to court, which I don't believe it will, he'll probably be found not guilty. In a rush to judgment, and this has been my observation, in everyday life with everyday people, there's always a rush to judgment on the part of the police to arrest somebody, charge them, get them arraigned. A rush of judgment when it comes to the district attorney to indict somebody and overcharge them. And then the next thing you know, they're going to a so-called speedy trial, knowing many times that they have flimsy charges against individuals. You might not like what I'm saying, but this goes on every day in the so-called judicial system. In the most instances, there is nothing but crime and punishment. There is no justice within the judicial system for everyday people. Their constitutional rights are violated. They're mistreated, mishandled, overcharged, maligned, condemned, polarized, giving them a so-called jury of their peers, which is not a jury of their peers. It's mostly white people sitting in judgment of black people. And you know what's going to happen when that happens. You know, all white county, all white, the judge is white, all the jurors are white, the bailiff is white, the sheriffs are white. Everybody's white, automatically found guilty. There is no presumption of innocence. So the Justice Department, they admitted that the operative indictment against former FBI Director James Comey was never presented to the full grand jury. Well, what type of grand jury was there? Was there a partial grand jury? Was a grand jury made up of individuals who had the inside track? They got to get this thing together here. Were his constitutional rights violated in a rush to judgment? The admission came under sharp questioning from U.S. District Judge Michael Nachmanoff after several judges overseeing parts of the case had raised concerns about the government's presentation and an apparent discrepancy in the grand jury record. That constitutes, right there, automatic grounds for dismissal. Many times people take it lightly because it's not happening to them. And former FBI Director James Comey has already stated to his attorneys he can't wait to go to trial and testify and declare his innocence. How would you feel? Let me pose the question to this audience. How would you feel if an indictment was brought against you? How would you feel if there was a rush to judgment against you, or your son, or your daughters, your friends, your associates, or someone that you come in contact with? How would you feel? You would not like it. You wouldn't like it if you were being misused and abused and taken advantage of. You wouldn't like it if prosecutorial gross misconduct occurred and ineffective assistance of counsel from public pretenders, guised as court-appointed attorneys. Yes, public pretenders, I know how they operate. So a full grand jury should have been convened in order for the so-called alleged evidence against former FBI Director James Comey to even be considered worthy of indicting him. Instead of presenting a new indictment to the full panel after it rejected one of the counts, interim U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan gave the grand jury's foreperson an updated version not seen by the other grand jurors to sign. Now, you know her boss is not going to like this because she's mucking the case up. You get it right the first time. Because if you don't get it right the first time, the plausibility factor of somebody walking free because of prosecutorial misconduct, ineffective assistance of counsel, district attorneys being overzealous in attempting to charge someone, it falls back on them. Nachmanoff asked the government several times whether he understood correctly that the operative indictment was never shown to the entire panel. Quote, "Yes, that is my understanding," end quote, said Tyler Lemons, an assistant U.S. attorney. Then if you weren't prepared to go before a full grand jury, why did you even have a so-called partial grand jury? You know, it seems like there are a lot of inexperienced, little to none, low-level prosecutors and attorneys working at this time. I shall continue keep fighting the fight. You know, and at the expense of others, they're going to cause a lot of cases to be thrown out of court because they don't know what the hell they're doing. You make sure that you understand your constitutional rights in this nation. Let people talk about you, let them surmise, let them come to their own conclusions about you. It does not matter what people think about you. What matters is that you know the truth yourself. That's all that matters. When you know you're innocent and you know you're not lying and you know you haven't done anything wrong, you can stand on principle. You can stand on integrity. You can stand on morality. And in the end, sometimes it's instantaneous and sometimes it takes a prolonged period of time, but you will be vindicated. The judge called Halligan up to the lectern for additional questions, as she was the only prosecutor who made the government's case to grand jurors for an indictment. Quote, "Am I correct?" End quote, the judge began. Quote, "No, you're not," Halligan interrupted, clasping her wrist behind her back. She said the grand jury foreperson and a second grand juror were present in the magistrate's courtroom. Recalling the proceeding, the judge said he was familiar with the transcript and directed her to sit down. Her arrogance, her disrespect, and her narcissistic attitude is jeopardizing this case. These people are nasty. I don't care what you say. MAGA people are downright nasty, hateful, bitter people. Even the so-called professionals, they're all just alike. Michael Durbin, an attorney for Comey, told the judge that the apparent error calls for dismissal because, quote, "no indictment was returned," end quote. I agree. I agree with his attorney. A dismissal is in order. Now, whether he'll get it or not remains to be seen. That means the statute of limitations on the false statements and obstruction charges Comey faces, stemming from the 2020 testimony he gave Congress, has lapsed, he contended. Here we are in 2025, still dealing with stuff from 2020. You know, this is a side note, and this is probably going to segue into the next video that I'm going to do. The Republicans and the Democrats right now, they got everything all screwed up. They're concentrating on the Epstein files, and we don't care about the Epstein files. Because I'm going to tell you something, and I know right. Even if the files are released, there will be no incriminating evidence whatsoever against the president in the files. So all of you who are holding your breath, hoping and wishing and praying for the president's demise, is not going to happen. I said it's not going to happen. There are more important things that Congress should be thinking about and working on. You mean to tell me they ended the government shutdown with the dumb Democrats being duped, and the only thing that they can come up with is a vote on releasing the Jeffrey Epstein files? What about health care? What about SNAP benefits? Thanksgiving is next week, and recipients haven't received not one penny in their account. Families are out here in the food lines. I know because I have several people, several close friends of mine, who operate nonprofit organizations in feeding, clothing, and sheltering those that are in need. The pantries are stretched to the limits. They're running out of food. They're running out of resources. Inflation is out of control. Everything is totally expensive. And individuals are trying to convince us through the propagandists who own these crummy news outlets that we're just going to have the late Jeffrey Epstein on our minds. Are you kidding me? Are you serious? Tell it to a hungry family. Oh, well, at least we're going to get the Epstein files released. Tell it to a mother trying to feed her children. Tell it to a father who just lost his job. Tell it to a child that will go hungry tonight in America. Talking to people who are living in cardboard boxes and sleeping on the street and in the alleyways and park benches. Digging through garbage cans and trash cans when stores throw the garbage and stuff out at the end of the night, hoping and wishing and praying that there's something salvageable inside the trash. Talking to the person whose home is about to be foreclosed on, that the Epstein files are more important than getting them the help they need. What about the farmers that have lost billions of dollars? Crops are sitting there still rotting. And the only thing that these dumb Democrats and hateful Republicans want to talk about is the Jeffrey Epstein files. They need to get their damn priorities in order. The judge made no immediate ruling, but ordered prosecutors to address the matter in court filings by the end of business hours today. The revelation took over the intended focus of the hearing, Comey's bid to dismiss his case on the grounds that he's the target of a selective and vindictive prosecution at the hands of President Trump's Justice Department. There may be some plausibility in there. And a lot of people, you ought to understand, see, y'all keep playing checkers. These people are playing chess. Who was at the Saudi Arabia dinner, a celebration banquet, or whatever they had yesterday? The one and only Elon Musk. Didn't I tell you that they were still friends? I told you. There's nothing but a deflection. Elon Musk leaving the White House, that was on friendly terms. They're still buddies, they're still pals. When billionaires fall out, it's not like when everyday people fall out. Billionaires will cuss each other out on Monday and be friends by Monday evening on the golf course. Individuals who have everything to lose and nothing to gain will hold hate and bitterness in their soul and in their heart forever and ever and never let it go over something petty. You all have no idea what's really going on behind the scenes. Night and day, day and night. Someone doesn't come all the way from Saudi Arabia to America with a presidential visit just to have lunch or dinner. It's much deeper than that. And I'll tell you, I'll go on the record, I don't care about the Jeffrey Epstein files. It's none of my business. I don't care. I care about hurting people. I care about America rotting and disintegrating from within. I care about the hungry and the homeless. I care about seniors losing their Medicaid and health care. I care about children that have enough food to eat and have their basic needs and necessities. On yesterday, I made a 2-part video. Go watch it. The psychology of poverty. All this stuff is nothing but a smoke screen, ladies and gentlemen. It's a distractor to get you so uninvolved in what's important and have your mind on something that's not important. And meanwhile, the puppet masters behind the scenes are systematically destroying everything that's vital and important to you and me. Be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it and it might not be the way that you want it. And I'm going to go on record and say again today, if the files are released, it will not matter because there will be nothing incriminating in there about the president. So stop holding your breath. Stop waiting for some terrible news to come down the pike, and it darn sure ain't coming from the racist and bigoted network. It's time for people to grow up and deal with important factors here. A core claim used to undercut the prosecutions of many of Trump's foes, the vindictive prosecution argument Wednesday faced its first real test in court. Though the narrative of Trump's retribution campaign against his political enemies has become pervasive, notch off must decide whether Comey was unfairly signaled out and his charges should be dropped. And behind the scenes, they're going to try to put pressure on this judge, which is called judicial interference. The judge has to consciously make his own decision. Comey, an outspoken critic of the president since leaving his first administration, contends Trump's, quote, personal spite, end quote, was the impetus of a 2-count indictment stemming from 2020 testimony he gave Congress, brought just before the statute of limitations was set to expire. Well, let's go back in time. Remember, they said there were mass weapons of destruction in Iraq, and then the Joint Chief of Staff's chairman, the late Colin Powell, appeared before the Senate Judiciary Committee, making the case for America to go to war. Remember? And they found out there were no weapons of mass destruction in Saddam Hussein's country. People pretend like they are students of history, but they don't really pay attention to what's going on. Being pretentious and ignorant is not factual. You have to know what you're talking about when you're talking about it. That's why politics have been dumbed down to just catchphrases. A proof of the deep-seated rivalry, Comey, in court filings, pointed to a 60-page record of grosses and gripes between him and Trump in the media and online, spanning nearly a decade. Well, that might have some bearing right there. The DOJ, they should have sent in their best people to handle this case. Dearman contended the record is, quote, crystal clear, end quote, that Comey's prosecution would not have occurred without Trump's apparent vendetta against him. Though Trump's irritation toward Comey may have justified his 2017 firing, quote, it is not a justification for bringing the full weight of the criminal justice system down on him, end quote, the defense attorney said. Let me tell you one thing. When you are working for people who you know who can't stand you, you know they loathe you, despise you, why would you even work for them? You just leave and move on to another job. I don't understand why people are always arguing with their bosses, their supervisors, their managers. If you don't like the job, leave it. I'm not going to work where I'm not wanted. I'm not going to work where I'm not happy. I don't care what the pay would be. It's not worth peace of mind. It's not worth aggravation. It's not worth ulcers. It's not worth sleepless nights just for a paycheck. How many people are always griping, complaining, moaning, groaning about their jobs, about the people they work for, but yet they still go to them. Then get further training. Develop your vocational skills, your scientific skills. Make yourself become more marketable and more employable. And then you can advance and do something that you really love instead of doing something that you have to do just to get a paycheck to try to pay a bill or two. Notchnoff questioned how Halligan fits into the picture and whether the defense sees her as a, quote, stalking horse or puppet for the president, to which Friedman said her role was to do what she was told. And those are the kinds of people that are working in government right now. They're going to do what they're told. The government refuted the notion that Halligan's prosecutorial decisions came at Trump's direction, resoundingly rejecting both descriptions. He's a liar. The president controls the DOJ. He might have appointed somebody as the attorney general, but he's the boss. Anybody that the president has nominated or that's a part of his administration, they serve at the discretion of the president. Now let's get it straight here. You're not going to come up in the court and start lying to the judge like the judge doesn't know what's going on here. Quote, Ms. Halligan was not directed to seek this prosecution. Lemon said it was her decision and her decision only. Wait a minute. Listen to this double talk right here. Quote, Ms. Halligan was not directed to seek this prosecution. It was her decision and her decision only. That's a lie. The Justice Department has urged Nachmanoff to reject Comey's bid to dismiss the case. Well, that's not going to happen, contending that to do so would risk impairing a core executive function. In response to his motion, prosecutors said Comey used news reports, social media posts, and speculation, quote, to weave a tale of constitutional violations, end quote. Well, all the lawsuits that have been filed against all these major corporations, didn't they go to social media, news reports, and analysts talking? Yes. Sometimes these so-called lawyers don't make any sense when they're talking because they don't understand the art of persuasion. They don't understand the art of debating. Where I come from, being raised up in the hood, you had to be a great debater. Be you a street debater or a scholastic debater. You learn your debating skills through trial and error. We used to play the dozens when I was growing up. And you had to be quick with it and sharp with it. Nobody was getting shot. Nobody was getting killed. It was just a game. In this soft touch, sensitive society, everybody's offended over every little thing. People just offended, they're offended, and they're offended over and over and over again. The article goes on to say, selective and vindictive prosecutorial claims, two separate but related defenses, are challenging to prove. That's primarily because prosecutors retain broad discretions as to whom they charge. That may be true, but the prosecutors have to have plausible reasons for charging someone. But in most cases, prosecutors flagrantly violate their oaths and they violate the law. With them, the end justifies the means. Lie, cheat, and steal. Get your conviction. That's what's on their minds. It goes on every day. People who don't have the means and the fame and the power and the money to fight endlessly against baseless claims and charges and accusations, they suffer the wrath of the judicial system. In the case of Sean Diddy Combs, if he had just been any other person, he would have been buried beneath that judicial system by now. But because he's a billionaire, he's got the money to continue to fight, and fight he shall. I'm not justifying anything the man has said or done. I'm just dealing with facts here. When you're a billionaire, and millionaires, you can get away with a lot of stuff in this nation. Don't tell me that the rich don't get favorability. Don't tell me that the rich don't get preferential treatment. Don't tell me that the rich don't get away with crimes. They do it every day. To prevail in a selective prosecution, claims defendants must prove they were unfairly singled out for prosecution where others similarly situated have not been. Why would a defendant have to prove it when it's already there? They must also show the government's selection was based on an unlawful reason, such as race, religion, or constitutionally protected conduct. Well, we already know black folk are not going to get a fair break in the judicial system. So they can throw that race crap out. In vindictive prosecution claims, defendants must show that the government harbored genuine animus, quote unquote, toward them, such that they would not have been prosecuted otherwise. Comey said he is a, quote, rare case, end quote, that fits the bill. Now, let me tell you something about former FBI Director James Comey. He's nobody's fool. He's nobody's idiot. He knows exactly what he's doing. Comey's lawyers noted Trump publicly called on Attorney General Pam Bondi to pursue charges against Comey specifically, which Durbin said is, quote, effectively an admission that this is a political prosecution, end quote. The call for charges continued as the top prosecutor in the district, Eric Siebert, expressed reservations about the case. Amid the pressure, Siebert resigned and Bondi appointed Halligan to fill the role, elevating, listen, a former White House aide with no prosecutorial experience who was handpicked by the president for the job. If that's the case, as a law student, they might as well give me a job as even in politics. You don't need experience to become a politician anymore. You don't even have to have morality anymore. Just throw your hat in a race. Declare your candidacy. So when I hear about the so-called family values, so-called conservative party, I laugh. There's nothing family about it, there's nothing conservative about it, and there's nothing moral about the MAGA Republican Party. The call for charges continued even as the top prosecutor in the district, Eric Siebert, expressed reservations about the case. Nachman pressed the Justice Department over whether a formal declination memo, deciding against charges for Comey exists. But Lemon said the Deputy Attorney General's office had directed him not to disclose the matter either way because it does exist. You know, Lemons, you're nobody's fool. You know all this stuff is going to come out in court. Comey's attorney also raised the abrupt firing of Comey's daughter, Maureen, from her role as a prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, suggesting the attack on his family showed, quote, unequivocal, objective evidence of personal animus, end quote. I agree with him. The bid to dismiss the case for selective and vindictive prosecution is just one prong of the defense's efforts to make sure it never gets to trial. No, because they're going to try to get Comey to plead guilty, and Comey's not going to plead guilty to anything. So it's going to be a long and protracted road that they're going to travel. Last week, U.S. District Judge Cameron Curry heard arguments over Halligan's appointment, which both Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James have challenged. They contend she never had the authority to bring charges in the first place, rendering her signature on their indictments void and requiring dismissal. Now, notice something very slick that's going on here. If the case is lost, they're going to blame it on the lowly, inexperienced prosecutor. That's what you call political chess. She brought the charges. She was responsible. She appeared before the grand jury. We never authorized it. We never co-signed it. She will be the fall person if this thing goes south. Learn something from the rich and powerful, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I'm not concerned about the Jeffrey Epstein files. I could care less. The judge who usually sits on the federal bench in South Carolina, but was selected out of district to consider the matter, seems skeptical that Halligan is lawfully serving as interim U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia and said she would rule before Thanksgiving. So the judge has reservations. A magistrate judge in Comey's case Monday also granted a defense request for access to typically secret grand jury material after finding a, quote, disturbing pattern of profound investigative missteps, end quote, in the record. There's a strong possibility that these charges are going to be dismissed. And then Halligan is going to be fired. I said there's a strong possibility that these charges against former FBI Director James Comey is going to be dismissed and Halligan is going to be fired. So that ruling is on pause until the Justice Department can raise objections and until Nachmanoff weighs in, but could prompt further endeavors. So tentatively, if all fails, Comey will stay in trial January 5th. He has pleaded not guilty, which is his right. And I'm going to give you some free advice as a law student. Listen to me and listen to me carefully. If you are ever accused of something that you know that you didn't do, keep your mouth shut. Demand that your Miranda rights be read, ask for an attorney, and never enter into a guilty plea, no matter how beautiful they make it appear to be. Maintain your innocence. Do not sign away your constitutional rights through a negotiated guilty plea. Don't ever do it. Don't throw your life away to make a ADA happy. I know what I'm talking about. On this particular platform here, and I have friends on other platforms that I can bust it up with and laugh and talk about. On this platform, this is a serious platform. Information, education, enlightenment. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, kindly subscribe. Because I'll be dealing with topics probably most people don't want to deal with. And that's okay. I'm becoming a criminal defense attorney for a reason. And if you want to know why, join me tomorrow night when I'll be interviewed by Dr. Danetta Donaldson. I'll be on her show tomorrow night. She's going to interview me. And I'm going to talk about my life in full disclosure tomorrow evening. But tonight, I'm just going to be dealing with various topics here. You're welcome. Thank you all for watching. Never surrender. Never quit.